Conversation tonight about welcoming tourism back to Southeast Asia. And as you know, we've done a number of programs about Thailand and the efforts that Thailand has made to reopen its borders to foreign tourists and international tourists. But tonight we've decided to change the focus a little bit and look around the region. So we haven't invited any Thai authorities. There will be a couple of Thai people on the panel representing international organizations. And just some basic housekeeping before we start, or actually some housekeeping first. If you have any questions and you're in the room, there's obviously a mic for you that will be made available at the end of the presentations. If you're watching us on Facebook Live, please put your questions in the comments, and we'll be monitoring your questions. And because we know that there are quite a lot of journalists who are not in the country, not in Thailand, and in particular there are a number of Filipino journalists following us tonight. If you ask your question via the chat, via the comments on Facebook Live, could you please identify the media that you're from? So that'll make it easier for us to track and to direct your questions. So my name is Vincent Vatican. I am a freelance journalist and a member of the programming committee here. I seem to have inherited the mantle of doing a lot of the tourism-related panels here, and so it's my pleasure to do this one as well. One other FCCT thing before I forget, we are now open again after many months of closures and restrictions, and so if you'd like to join us, if you're in Bangkok and would like to join us in the club, please do. The restaurant and the bar are open. We have a full program of events, including a panel on the parallel economy in Myanmar. That's tomorrow night, also at 7 o'clock Bangkok time. And on this Friday, we're doing our first fun event in many, many moons. There's a piano night here on Friday. So please do join us if you can. And on that note, I'm going to say a few things about what's happening in the region before we get started and before I introduce the panel to you. First, we actually struggled and we wondered about what to call this panel. Are we talking about reopening? Is it a recovery? Is it what does recovery mean? Is it a relaunch, a restart? what's happening. Unlike many other regions in the world, Southeast Asia has been very conservative in its policy. All the countries in Southeast Asia have been very conservative in their COVID policies and letting people in. And just in the last 2 weeks, in the last few weeks, maybe in the last month, if you count the sort of reopening of Bali, countries have changed their position, and they've tried very hard to find ways to reopen the borders to international tourists. So among the things, those of you who are in Thailand are obviously familiar with what we're doing here, called Test and Go. It's pretty much eliminated quarantine for people from 60-some countries who are fully vaccinated. The only condition is that you come into the country. There are a number of conditions, but the only restrictions are that when you arrive, you wait in a hotel room for your test results, and if your test results are negative, you're free to travel. And incidentally, for people who are following this, please note that those lists, the list of countries that are authorized to use the Test and Go country, that list is reevaluated and updated every 2 weeks, and we are now in the second week. So look for a new announcement, hopefully more countries, and hopefully no countries will fall off the list, and that'll be Thursday or Friday. Similarly, Singapore has started vaccinated travel lanes with a smaller number of countries. And those agreements, like most of the Test and Go destinations in Thailand, are not reciprocal. They're unilateral. They're one way. You can come here, but we may or may not be able to go there. But currently, that's about a dozen countries, and I think by the first week of December, I see John nodding. By the first week of December, that should be 21 countries, I think. Did I get that right? Yes. And then there's another approach, which is opening isolated destinations. So, for example, Langkawi in Malaysia is opening to international travel with certain conditions. Phu Quoc in Vietnam should be opening. I think Nha Trang already has. So that there's that and of course there's the case of Bali, which has technically been open since the 14th of October. But had no international flights, so that's changing as well. Is that another model to look at? And then there are countries that are still essentially closed with some exceptions, but are looking at ways to reopen. And as of yesterday, we have a new model, which is Cambodia, that said anybody who's fully vaccinated, come. There are no restrictions anymore. Prove that you're fully vaccinated, provide the right documentation and your vaccine certificate, obviously, insurance, and a couple of other things, but you are free to travel when you arrive. So that's the newest approach. And what we're going to be looking at tonight is how those approaches are interrelated, or how they're do countries look at each other for examples and for models on how to reopen safely, keeping their population safe, keeping the travelers safe, and keeping and getting the flow of tourism back. So, since we have a lot of ground to cover and a lot of options to examine, I will quickly introduce our panel in reverse order of the way that the order that they're going to be speaking. And first, there's one other detail that I wanted to say. Some of you have seen older versions of the program and of the list of speakers. This has been a complex panel to put together. There have been lots of changes. We have had, if I remember correctly, if I counted correctly, 9 different changes of speakers for a panel of 4, which is not a terrific average. And the last change of lineup happened about 5 minutes ago. The Secretary of Tourism of the Philippines had an emergency and unfortunately canceled, but she has sent Undersecretary Verna, who's somebody I've also known for a number of years, who doesn't seem to be on the screen right now. So maybe I'll save her introduction for later. And I'll go on to John Consencio from Singapore Tourism Board, Executive Director of Singapore Tourism Board. John, would you like to say a few words?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Great. Thank you, Vincent. It's good to be on this panel. I was also roped in rather last minute, but I'm very, very happy to be on this panel.
Can I say thank you for accepting very last minute as well?
Sure. I have a good team of staff in Bangkok who prepared the slides for me in super last minute. But I think it's good. We're going to have a good panel discussion. Do you want me to start now, or do you want to do any other
introductions, and then I'll get back to you in a moment.
Okay, great.
Kunkrit, who's even a more last minute. We've just lost you on the screen, though. Where have you gone? Are you still with us? So Kunkrit joins us from Thai Air Asia. We were supposed to have, as some of you probably saw in the announcements, Tony Fernandez was going to join us live on Zoom, and he had an urgent meeting that was announced that he learned about late last night. So he kindly, AirAsia kindly got Kunkrit to join us. But has he disappeared from the screen? Are you still with us? And but Tony did record a message for us that I will play a little bit later. Oh, here you are, Kunkrit. Would you like to say, so I was just introducing you and saying that you were drawn into this panel even later than John was. But thank you so much for joining us so last minute, and since Tony had an urgent meeting that he couldn't move. So thank you very much for that. Would you like to say a few words to introduce yourself, or?
Yeah. Thank you, Vincent. First of all, thank you so much that inviting Asia. Although Tony cannot join, so I represent him for tonight, this evening. So thank you so much. So, and I apologize for Tony for cannot participate for this section.
Great, thank you for being with us. And then sitting right here to my right is the acting executive director of Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office, Don Natakon Asuni, who is based here in Bangkok and who can tell us a little bit about what MTCO does.
Sure. Thank you very much, Vincent, for kind introduction, and good evening, everyone here on site. Good to see you live again, and greetings all the panelists today. Glad to have you all, and thank you, Vincent, for inviting me. So, as he mentioned before, that I'm Ton. Basically, I'm Natakon Asuni, or you can call me shorter as Ton. I'm now currently serve as the acting executive director of the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office. Some of you may have heard or might not. So basically, the office is the collaborative framework of 6 governments in the Greater Mekong sub-region, including Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, and China, 2 provinces, Yunnan and Guangxi. So basically, the office is the secretariat office, which serves 2 main roles, which are, first of all, providing the secretariat functions to the 6 countries. And the second one is to provide the coordination role for the 6 member countries to coordinate and to cooperate in terms of the strategies, including marketing and tourism strategies. And also this framework has been established back into 1992 with the support of the Asian Development Bank. Basically, the framework has different secretariats, and tourism is one of the secretariat of these frameworks. So basically, the office is independently operate and kind of get the operation and direct by the board directly to 6 government. That's what MTCO is, Vincent.
Could you say something about what you've been doing since the onset of COVID and what has the office been able to do for governments, especially in countries where certainly international tourism is ground to a halt, and there is still domestic tourism. But what sort of projects have you been working on in the last 18, 19 months?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Vincent. Basically, the office is providing the support, and as the name mentioned, that we are the coordinator who communicate and coordinate among the public sector, which is governments, and also we are working with the private sectors to bridge the gap between these 2 sectors, because normally private sector are keen to communicate with the government. So during the COVID time, as you all know, that the international tourism has been halted, and also the termination of arrival has shut down. So basically, our office is providing the fundamental support in terms of communication, and also the coordination from governments, and send the messages to the private sector. And also what we have recently been doing during the pandemic time, we are one of the first tourism board that provide the recent update and live updates about COVID in each country through our digital platform. So that's the initiative that we respond to the the pandemic. And also currently, as with the support of the Asian Development Bank and the effort of the 6 governments in the Greater Mekong sub-region, we are producing and we are currently releasing the Mekong Tourism Recovery Communication Plan to disseminate the confidence and the right messages to the industry that this region is safe and is also ready to build back in terms of tourism. So at the moment we are working on in terms of policy framework and policy making. And on the private sector side, in the past years, MTCO has created the public-private partnership with the Destination Mekong, who is the executor of some of the initiatives that help to support and promote the program of the region, aligning to the tourism sector strategy and marketing strategy of the Greater Mekong sub-region. That's what we are doing in terms of public and private sector, Vincent, at the beginning.
Could you give me an example of the kind of what you're advising people, what you're advising governments and tourism authorities to communicate? What's the priority? Is it about safety? Is it about opening up? Is it about what are you looking? What angles are you looking at?
Right. First of all, the key messages of this region to blast out, to communicate to the private sector is right. The safe and hygiene and build back the confidence into the region, because of course, you all know that before the COVID, this region much more rely on the international travelers, with more than 80% of arrival is international, right? So that's our key priority with the recovery communication plan to communicate and to send the right messages to the industry and the global audience that we are ready to build back. We are ready to welcome back tourists. And also in terms of private sector, as I mentioned before, that I mean we have been created the public-private sector, which you can look at on the website mekongtourism.org, with the destination Mekong, who is executing some of the initiatives to promote and to immerse the region into the experiences. Because ultimate goal of the office is the mandate is to promote this region as a single sustainable tourism destination. So for example, some of the initiatives that we are working on, one of the flagship initiative is the Experience Mekong collection, where we where we promote the small responsible businesses in the Greater Mekong sub-region, which we believe that these all small businesses are the fabric, are the gems of the region. And also these small businesses are for the pandemic. So we aim to revive, we aim to help and support them to get back on track once the tourism is resumed, something like that. Vincent?
And you were saying that 80% of the source market before COVID was international, and by international, I assume you mean not within the region. So are you doing anything within the region to promote? Are the countries doing anything to cooperate and to promote facilitating travel between countries in the region, in the Mekong region? Are there other things that you're doing that are maybe more aimed at a domestic market, or a very short haul market?
You mean in the past or at the
No,
moment?
now as we're reopening, are there things that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, of course. As everyone and people can see that some of the country are implementing and conducting the policy to open up, right? And some of the countries in the region are also in talk to do and focus more in terms of intra-regional travel in order to attract and improve the facilitation of travel. Because after, not really after, during the pandemic, we can't really get the outside region people to come in and travel, right? So the trend has been a little bit shift to the intra-region travel and also the domestic travels, as you can see in some country, which is heavily promoting the domestic market, for example, like Thailand, or even in Vietnam during the past couple months, that they are shifting and they are highlighting their own domestic people to get spur the economy into the destination within the region. I can say that in terms of regional perspective, many countries in the region are doing good and shifting toward to the domestic tourism, and also focusing more in the future on between countries to country, not that really pinpoint to the outside region travelers.
Have you noticed any best practices or models that have been successful in the region?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, Thailand for Phuket Sandbox, right? That's one of the first model. regionally and globally that Thailand is doing good job on that to put the destination on the spot. And also recently, yeah, Cambodia just announced and recently opening the country by, as you mentioned before, that whoever who got fully vaccinated can enter the country to travel, right? And
Do you think there'll be a sort of domino effect now that Thailand is open to 63 countries and Cambodia is totally open? Does it force the other countries, Laos and Vietnam, for example, to do the same thing?
I mean, from the regional standpoint, I think they all have their own policy and their own plan to reopen the country with different measures and different regulations. So, I mean, but in overall, they are all in the track. They are all in progress to reopen again, which is good for the region, like Mekong region, to opening up again, as this is one of the region considered as the most fastest growing in the world, basically.
Okay, well, let's move a little bit beyond the Mekong region and go to John. Would you like to say something about what things are like in Singapore? I made a brief introduction of vaccinated travel lanes. Would you like to actually? When would you like to show your? You have a few slides. Would you like to?
Okay, I've got about 4 slides. Maybe we can start with the slides that will set some context.
Okay, let's do that. Can we put up the slideshow, please? There we go. Okay.
Great. So good evening again, everyone. Thank you for being present at this session. I think the buzz term now that most countries are using is the VTL, the vaccinated travel lanes, right? Singapore has started several of the vaccinated travel lanes with some of the regional countries as well as further afield in Europe and the United States and North America. We started in September 2021 with Brunei and Germany. And then I think in October, November, we started to gain some momentum by opening up to Europe, North America. And the latest are with our neighbors, Malaysia and Indonesia. So by the 6th of December, we would have about 21 countries or regions, right, that would have had vaccinated travel lanes with Singapore. We've been monitoring the vaccinated travel lanes. I think it's quite interesting to see that since we started in September, there have been about 18,000 travelers to Singapore, and only 17 out of the 18,000 have been tested COVID positive. Right? This works out to about 1 case per 1,000 VTL travelers. So that's a good indication. I think vaccinated travel lanes are a good way to open in a very much more calibrated manner before we start with the full openings. I know that there are a range of countries that have been using VTLs. Some are a bit more liberal in opening up to many, many countries. For us, I think we are a bit more calibrated. We want to open in a slow and safe manner. I think Ton just now mentioned, right, the important point that when we open up, right, at this point, at this juncture in time, we're basically looking at instilling confidence in travel, right? And therefore, we are opening in a bit more cautious manner. If you could go to the next slide. So what are people going to see when they eventually come to Singapore? Well, I think, we've been doing a lot of promotions during the past 1.5 years on people who have the desire to travel to Singapore and miss Singapore because this was a destination that they used to come to either regularly or they enjoyed themselves when they came here. But we are also looking at reimagining Singapore, right? What it's like to come back to Singapore after a hiatus of 1.5 years. There are certain things that we have been dialing up and we are preparing for reopening. Some of the things that we didn't promote very aggressively in the past, like our nature within the city. There are new attractions that have opened in Singapore. On the slide there, you can see 3 of them: the Museum of Ice Cream, Sky Helix, and then there are exhibitions. There are also new tours that Singapore has curated, which we want to offer to our people who are visiting Singapore again. And then, of course, even within the pandemic situation, we've opened several new hotels, and quite signature hotels in the city. The other area that is very important to Singapore, out of the 18 million tourists that we received pre-pandemic in 2019, 30% are business travelers. So we've started in October with what we term as the 4 demonstration events. So we have worked with the different government agencies in Singapore, right? Immigration, the Ministry of Transport, the Ministry of Health, right? To try and liberalize the way we hold events in Singapore. And we've chosen 4 key events as a demonstration, and again, instilling confidence, right? That business travel and the MICE industry in Singapore is ready to open. Right? And the 4 demonstration events are listed here, we started in October with the Asia CEO Forum, then the Gamescom Asia. They're a bit small, starting with 50 initially, then we've grown to 1,000.
Is that the next slide, please? Sorry.
The upcoming one is the Bloomberg New Economic Forum, which is going to be held next week. And ITAP is the one in November. And after this, I think, we would have gathered enough of information and learnings, right, to see how we can open a bit more aggressively moving beyond November. If you could move to the 3rd slide. This is something I think is important. I was telling my colleagues that we really need to highlight this, right? The slide on cruise. Do you have the slide up there, Vince?
One more. Yes, this one, cruises.
Cruise, right, yeah. Okay, so this is interesting, right? For Singapore, right, when we couldn't leave the country to go traveling around the region or beyond, we had to pivot towards domestic tourism, right? And Singapore is a small city. There is a lot that we could do up to a certain amount of places that we could visit. After that, right, people really wanted to travel. And so we started in November last year. So it's been already a year, right? In November 2020, when we started cruise to nowhere. The cruise industry had a very, very negative reputation based on what happened in 2020 with regard to some of the cruisers that were cruising, and then there were COVID cases on board, and then ports didn't want to take the cruise ships in, right? But I think we worked very well with the cruise lines and with the authorities here to open up cruise to domestic travel. Okay, so it's basically a cruise to nowhere, or we prefer to call it a seacation, right? You don't stop at any ports. There are no ports of call. There was a reduced number. Instead of having like 5,000, you only go with 50%, 2,500. And then we did aggressive testing. Everybody who boarded the ship pre-boarding had to do the PCR test, and then later on the ART. And then we held the cruisers responsible, very clearly responsible for maintaining the safe management measures on board the ship. So I'm happy to say that in 1 year on, right, we've had 250 sailings, about 3 days, 2 nights for each of the sailings. Some were 4 days, 3 nights, and we've carried 330,000 passengers. This is basically residents of Singapore traveling. And with the safety and protocols that were in place, right, the incidence rate has only been 0.002%, right, without transmission. So they were just single cases. The interesting thing is that I think for the region, this is an opportunity, right? We've proven that cruise is a safe option for travel. The next stage would be for Southeast Asia to come together, right? And for cruises to move towards, instead of cruise to nowhere, right, to start cruising to ports of call in Southeast Asia. I think this is important firstly for intra-Southeast Asia travel, so Southeast Asians traveling within the region, but more so, right, if Southeast Asia wants to open up to longer haul destinations like Europe and the US, but especially Europe, right? where there are serial cruisers, right? People who enjoy cruising a lot, they come to Singapore as a port of call here, home ported ships here, and then we travel to the rest of Southeast Asia. It's very attractive. I think pre-COVID, right? We see the number of long-haul travelers, both from Europe, from US, and from the rest of Asia coming to Singapore. And then from here, they can take the eastern wing of travel, that means from Singapore to the different islands and ports in Indonesia. And then also they take the western wing of travel to Malaysia, Thailand, and way up, even up to Vietnam. So this is an opportunity here, right? I think Cruise has proven that they are confident that they can carry out an itinerary that's safe. And I think we are waiting for the rest of the region to come on board with us to do cruise around the region and to open up to intra-Southeast Asia travel as well as travel beyond. So I hope these few points, right, can be a segue into some of the other discussions that we can have later in this evening. Thank you very much, Vincent.
Thank you, John. Can I just ask you a question before we move on?
Sure.
So obviously cruises are a market that haven't been really developed in the region up until now, and as you said, that there's a lot of potential there. But of course, Singapore is also traditionally a hub for the region. It's the point of entry for so many people with Changi, and obviously the numbers have, like everywhere in Southeast Asia, have fallen off dramatically in the last year and a half. What do you see happening to Singapore's role as that hub, as that point of entry for the region?
Yeah, so I think we're very cognizant of that. We are a very open economy. We were one of the first countries to realize that we can't remain closed for a very long time. We declared that, in the battle for COVID, right, we have to move towards endemicity, right? It has to be an endemic acceptance of how we deal with the virus. We've taken a terrible beating, right? Changi Airport is one of the great airports in the world. But as I mentioned, right, we are still a bit conservative in how we are opening up. We don't open to like 50, 60 countries yet. It's only 21 countries. But I think we are on the road to re-establishing ourselves. In the past 2 weeks, actually, right, you've seen the number of countries that we're opening up to. There are a lot of discussions in terms of vaccination certification, mutual recognition of vaccine certifications that have to be discussed. And as these gain momentum, I think in the next few months, you will see that Singapore and Changi Airport will try very, very hard to regain its position that it once used to have.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Before we're going to move on to Kunkrit, who is still with us, I think. Possibly. Kunkrit, are you from Thai Asia?
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, there you are.
Yeah.
Great.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Okay. Maybe just before, would you like me to show the message that Tony sent? Okay. So could we show the two videos that they're so in his busy day, and on the day that that he couldn't make it to join us tonight, he did take the time to record himself and send us a little message. So thank you.
Sorry I'm not there in person or by Zoom, but fortunately I had loads of meetings on, good meetings. By Zoom, but fortunately I had loads of meetings on, good meetings. COVID's been hugely devastating to us. That's stating the obvious. But in some ways, it's helped me focus to restructure, rebuild, and refocus our group into a tighter, leaner airline, and create a new digital business, which is very exciting in the form of our super app, teleport, and Big Pay. I'm hoping, I've said this a few times, but I do think we're on the path to recovery. There are going to be a few bumps along the way, as you've seen a few resurgence of cases, but most of those cases are coming from non-vaccinated. But I think we're at the beginning of the end. When is the end? For me, when all our planes are flying, and I assume that will be more towards the end of next year, probably about the third quarter of next year. I think we're seeing now Thailand with 64 countries, Singapore with 20 odd, Malaysia slowly opening up, Cambodia allowing vaccine fee, those who are vaccinated not to be quarantined. I think the first thing for the tourism industry is to get rid of quarantine. I see no need for it when you are vaccinated already. And the second point is if you want PCR testing, we should limit.
Sorry.
So I hope to see you in the flesh. I've had many fun discussions in Thailand with the Correspondence Club, Foreign Correspondence Club, over many, many years. I do hate Zoom, so I hope to be in Bangkok soon, maybe in the new year, and hopefully meet all of you and talk about our war stories on COVID and look forward to a more exciting future for all of us. At the very bottom, at least we're all going to appreciate each other more and appreciate life a little bit better, having gone through these 2 years of hell. Take care, be safe, and remember one thing, only fly on AirAsia. Bye.
Great. Great. Would you like to add anything to Tony's comments or comment on his comments in any way? Obviously, he said that it was it's been a rough year. He said devastating year for airlines everywhere, but particularly here in this region. Would you like to add anything before I ask you some questions about?
Well, actually, it's quite, it has been very difficult time for all airlines in the region. I mean, in every airline in the world, because almost 2 years that, some parts of we can fly, the aircraft can be in the sky. But sometimes, for example, in Thailand, we were in the hibernation period during July and August as well, that we have to follow the regulation of the Thai authority that we have to stop operating for a while. So but anyway, in last year in the same time right now, November and December, we had a chance to fly, but only short time. And then we experienced with the second wave and the third wave again. And then I'm not sure what we call the fourth wave. So the thing that we have to adjust ourselves and to make our to adjust and to learn with the situation, and then to be ready to fly. Because right now I think we can see the good sign from even in Thailand or even other part of the world, that we can see the good side, and then we are ready to be in the sky again. Yeah.
So obviously, Thai AirAsia is a domestic airline in Thailand, but AirAsia as a group is one of the leaders in the region and for connecting the region. Can you say something about the role of AirAsia or of airlines in general in this reopening recovery process? Would you like to comment on that?
Well, we are actually, all of us know that AirAsia, we call it, we are ASEAN airlines. So we have the 4 hubs, four biggest hubs in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, in Thailand, and Indonesia and Philippines. So we have strong network across the regions. and even not only Southeast Asia and in Asia as well, we have the long haul to Korea, to Japan, and even the main China and Australia as well. So for right now, for the reopen, so I think every we call it AOC, every country, every Air Asia in Southeast Asia, we have to be ready for domestic first. So domestic is the new hope for us, and it's the key priority role for us that we want to focus on, especially in Thailand and Malaysia as well. That both of government allow people to travel with leisure purpose. So we hope that we can increase our capacity to be back to be normal as soon as possible. For example, in Thailand, for this month in Thailand, we have the capacity around 40%, almost 50% of domestic capacity. And next month, which is December, we aim to have 80% of capacity. And January next year, we aim to have fully 100% capacity of domestic. So
when you say 50% now and 100% in January, is that compared to 2019 or?
Yeah, it's compared to pre-COVID period, 2019. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
So that's the key priority of Air Asia, to focus the domestic first within the Q4 and Q1 next year. For once again, for international market, it's quite different from domestic market, because as you know that there are quite a lot of limitation of travel restriction between each country. For example, right now, even though Thailand has opened up for the 63 countries around the world, but it is only one way. There are other countries still have, for example, Malaysia and Singapore, that if Malaysian people travel to Thailand and then they just come with the test and go, no quarantine, only wait for the result of the test and stay at the hotel one night, and then they can travel within Thailand freely. But once they back home, they have to be quarantined, even home quarantine or state quarantine. But is it that I call one way? So what we are focused that we try to work quite closely with government to have try to convince government to negotiate for us that should be have travel bubble or G2G or bilateral agreement, that we should have two-way travel. Yes.
Just to add to that, the obvious market where that's the biggest issue is China and Hong Kong, where they are on the test and go list. So in theory, somebody could come if they need to go back to Hong Kong or to China. It's 14 plus 7, so 14 days in a restricted quarantine hotel and 7 days of home quarantine. So it's a total of 21 days, which is not something that's conducive to like a weekend in Phuket. So could you say something about, so given the troubles that airlines in general and Air Asia in particular have experienced in the last few months, do you approach the way you do business differently? What is doing business in 2019? How is that different from doing business in 2022?
Well, yeah, I think all of businesses that we have to learn that one of channel of revenue is not enough for everyone. So airline as well. So we have to look for other opportunity. Like we have to create more sources of revenues. We have to create more of line of businesses. Okay, for example, for Air Asia, actually we aim ourselves to be a tech travel company since 2018, but COVID, something that good about COVID. COVID is the thing that accelerate us to to go and to make us faster than we expect that to become a tech travel company. So right now, AirAsia, we don't call out ourselves as just an airline. We call ourselves that we call AirAsia Super Apps, that we not only sell only air ticket, we sell we sell we're gonna say that we sell everything about travel. We sell other airline tickets in our website, in our application. We sell hotel. When we do e-commerce, we do logistic. We do food delivery, even ride hailing that we also do. So this is what we adjust about the business. So we're looking for more lines of businesses, for not only be an airline for now. Being an airline is not enough for the post-COVID. So this is the position for AirAsia, that we're looking for more opportunity to make our application AirAsia.com to be super app, that we be the lifestyle travel. Yep.
Can I ask you? I mean, since it was the news here, obviously, you made a major acquisition in Thailand to do that. Could you tell us about that, and branching out into things like delivery and other services that are not necessarily travel related? So, could you tell us about what the super app is going to be in Thailand in particular, but now after that acquisition? You purchased Gojek.
Well, Vincent, sorry, I think my signal is not quite good. So
okay, sorry. Is this better? Sorry, can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, better.
No, I was going to say, could you say, since you're talking about the need to diversify and the fact that the airline no longer is, an airline business isn't self-sufficient anymore, and that you've branched out into acquisitions like acquiring Gojek in Thailand. Could you tell us a little bit more about the non-travel related services that you're thinking about?
Well, yeah, actually, in the near future, we project that the revenue should come, from both sides, the aviation side that all of us know about, air tickets and even the hotels, even the travel and the non-aviation. So that's why that we bought Gojek in Thailand. So we just want to utilize our strong brand in local in Thailand, and then we bought Gojek, and we collaborate with them, that we utilize Gojek as a strong brand as well in the region, and we also utilize our manpower. So as you know, that during hibernation, that our staff that have to be at home, so they don't have a job for a while. So we can utilize them, and we can convert them to jump to another business. So if we have another business, and we have so many business in the group, so then we can convert the manpower and maintain manpower as well. So that's we project that we want to have the many resources of revenue from the relevant business. So Gojek, and we right now we call AirAsia, right? That is a part of the future that we are planning.
Is there some sort of timeline for that, or not yet?
Yeah, we aim like the end of this year as well.
Okay, great. We'll get back to you with more questions, I'm sure. Is Undersecretary Verna with us now?
Yes, I'm here.
From the Philippines.
Good evening.
She muted your... So,
Can you hear me?
there you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for
See you
joining us.
again.
Yes, I mean, I mean, just a little bit of background. So I learned, 5 minutes before we went on, that Secretary of Tourism Bernadette Romulo Poyat would not be joining us tonight. But and obviously, I was disappointed to hear that because she's been such a great ambassador for tourism. But my excellent surprise was that I get to see Undersecretary Verna, who was actually, this is a personal remark, was directly responsible for my first trip to the Philippines about 5 or 6 years ago. And so it's a great pleasure to see you. So could you...
you here, Vincent.
Thank you for joining us so last minute. So I believe you have a presentation that I haven't seen. So would you like to?
Okay. So good evening to everyone. Apologies that our secretary couldn't make it tonight, but I am pleased to share with you all her presentation that she has prepared especially for you. So please bear with me. John Consecao, Executive Director for Southeast Asia of the Singapore Tourism Board. Crid Patanasan, Head of Government Relations of Thailand. Natakorn Asuni Naayudha, Acting Executive Director of the Mekong Tourism Coordinating Office. Mr. Tony Fernandez, CEO of AirAsia Group. And Vincent, of course, Vincent Richard Badakan, Moderator and member of the Programming Committee at the FCCT. And the members of the FCCT, good evening. The Philippine Department of Tourism offers our warmest thanks to the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand for the kind invitation to address this forum, which poses the question, what is the future of international tourism in Southeast Asia? Thailand and the Philippines, and of course, Singapore and the other countries represented here today, are active partners in the ASEAN. And we have committed to ensure Southeast Asia's competitiveness as a single tourism destination to support the recovery of tourism in the wake of this pandemic. In our countries, the tourism industry is essential to the growth of the economy. And in the Philippines, tourism hit its peak in 2019, when the sector made up 12.8% of the country's gross domestic product. However, due to the pandemic, tourism numbers dropped to levels not seen in almost 2 decades. And in 2020, tourism accounted for just 5.4% of the country's GDP, its lowest level since 2002, when it contributed 5.6%. Meanwhile, employment in Philippine tourism was estimated at 4.68 million in 2020, lower by 18.1% of 0.7 million in 2019. Knowing that millions of Filipinos depend on tourism for their livelihoods, we dedicated much time and effort in reopening our tourism destinations under gradual measures and safe conditions. So earlier this year, and prior to the re-implementation of the highest quarantine level in the country in March 2020, we began reopening destinations in concurrence with local government units, while following stringent protocols to ensure the safety of our stakeholders, our tourism workers, and the community surrounding our tourism destinations. The surge in new COVID cases earlier this year, as well as concerns over the Delta variant, impeded our progress. But thankfully, the Philippines has recently begun to gradually lower the community quarantine levels in areas with a marked decline in virus transmission and an increase in vaccination rates. So consequently, more destinations have reopened for domestic tourists, while those that have long been open to domestic tourism are starting to relax some protocols for fully vaccinated travelers, such as Boracay Island, Bohol, and the province of Cebu. So based on our traveler survey that we conducted in late 2020, Travelers, of course, are seeking outdoor activities such as going to the beach, hiking and biking, revealing a preference for the outdoors and well-ventilated areas over confined spaces. And in response to the survey results, we diversified our menu of tourism products and circuits. Apart from addressing the desire of tourists to engage in outdoor and physical family-oriented activities that promote health and wellness, these newly developed offerings are also make good use of our natural, cultural, and historical resources. So to boost the reopening of the tourism industry even more, we increased our efforts to expedite the vaccination of our tourism workers. And as of November 12, 2021, 308,000 tourism workers have already been vaccinated. And this is equivalent to about 71.55% of our target. We are also speeding up vaccination efforts in major tourist destinations in the country. And we already have a 95% vaccination rate in Bohol, 97% in Lapu-Lapu City, Cebu 98% in the Mountain Province, and 100% in Boracay Island, Baguio City, Mandaue, Cebu, and Coron, and San Vicente, and Palawan. The National Capital Region, which serves as the main gateway to the country, has already recorded a 92.12% vaccination rate among its eligible population as of November 14. So this is significant in boosting travel confidence to and within the country, especially once international travel resumes. We're also ensuring that more of our tourism destinations and accommodation establishments apply for the WTTC Safe Travel Stamp, as well as the Safety Seal Certificate, which is issued to accredited tourism establishments. As of November 5, 3 of our premier destinations like Baguio, Boracay, and the province of Ilocos Norte have had the honor of receiving the WTTC Safe Travel Stamp, which indicates that these places comply with globally recognized safety seals and hygiene protocols. While the pandemic caused great damage to our industry, it also gave us a chance to reflect on how we can make it better, more resilient, and more sustainable. And I'm proud to say that the Philippine Department of Tourism has long advocated sustainable tourism as the core of our strategies. In fact, under the Tourism Act of 2009, it stipulated that the state recognizes sustainable tourism development as integral to national socio-economic development efforts. So part of the DOT's efforts towards sustainable tourism practices was the closure of Boracay Island in 2018 for a 6-month rehabilitation. And this bold move was recognized and lauded both locally and internationally, with some groups hailing the Boracay rehabilitation as a benchmark for sustainable tourism and a potential springboard for institutionalizing the culture of sustainable tourism practices in the country. So achieving the desired level of sustainability in our industry was already a challenge prior to COVID-19 pandemic, but this global health crisis also only added to the difficulty. No thanks to the rapid acceleration of the production and consumption of single-use normal essentials such as masks, gloves, and other personal protective equipment. But while the use of single-use retail needs is unavoidable in the new normal scenario, we must find ways to do more and to do better with less. Proper waste disposal and management is also essential in managing the adverse effects of overconsumption. And this is one of the things that should be worked on. A welcome consequence of the pandemic is it has fostered openness to change and openness to new ways of thinking and acting. The DOT believes this is true not only for destination planners and managers, but also for our travelers as we observe changes in consumer behavior, preferences, and expectations. So while people lodged inside their homes for long periods during the pandemic, comes a growing market of travelers longing for longer holidays and more immersive experiences. Slow travel may also prove to be a more sustainable approach to the new normal. And with more bespoke activities involving hiking, biking, with local communities. And this new trend in travel may just be the answer to threats of over-tourism, especially in the attainment of more sustainable post-pandemic tourism industry. And with more companies adapting to a work-from-home arrangement, we are seeing a rise in workation packages coming from our hotels and resorts. This is the time for low-density, high-value, and low-impact travel to shine. Gone are the days of mass tourism, and tourism in the new normal can no longer just be about visitor numbers and the short-term economic gains, but must focus on providing guests with high-quality experiences and for the industry, long-term sustainable growth and development. So travel in the Philippines may have slowed down this past year, but it's still more fun. And we recently launched our teaser campaign, More Fun Awaits, to showcase the preparations and enhancements we have been making to our destinations for the eventual resumption of inbound tourism to the country. As I often say, it will take more than a pandemic to crush this industry of ours. Our award-winning destinations are still standing, and with greater sustainability initiatives in place, they will be around for generations to come. Combine this with the welcoming nature of the Filipino people and our new focus on creating more personal travel experiences with deeper impact, and I sincerely believe that our industry will emerge better than ever. Thank you and mabuhay.
Thank you. Could you tell us, what is there, I mean, I know this is a difficult question, but is there some sort of timeline as to when you expect or when you hope that the country will be able to reopen to foreign travelers in a more normal way? And when that happens, where will they come from?
Okay. Well, in terms of the reopening of our borders for international tourism, this is a decision that really requires meticulous planning, and the feasibility of following the footsteps of our ASEAN neighbors here who have really started to open up depends on our infection rate, our recovery, and our vaccination rate. So for this, we actually adhere to the interagency task force and the health experts as to when we can reopen the country for tourism for vaccinated foreign tourists. But at the moment, we do have quite a sizable number of Filipino diaspora. And so focus now is into bringing them into the country and capitalizing also on gains by also allowing them to enter and visit our different destinations.
So does that make, so the rules are different for returning overseas Filipinos?
Well, yes, I think the same is true for other countries in the ASEAN. Returning residents are, of course, very much welcome to come in, and Filipinos who are based overseas are also welcome to go back to the country.
Do you have any? Are you making at the department? Are you making any sort of projections about in terms of numbers or revenue for next year, or not really, not yet?
Well, at the moment, we're looking at in terms of projections. We're looking at recovery within a period of about 2.5 to 4 years, and this is aligned with what the experts say in the UNWTO, the World Travel and Tourism Council, and PATA Asia Travel Association. So basically, our projections are anchored on that because it's quite difficult to make projections of our own. So we're looking also at global figures.
So can I ask as well, because I mean, since you've shown us this More Fun Awaits, which is obviously a nod to the very successful campaign that you ran before COVID, which was if people don't know, it's More Fun in the Philippines. Are you starting to invest in that campaign to show that campaign in other countries and other places? Are you starting that effort now?
Yes, we're doing that. In fact, the More Fun Awaits is still part of the main It's More Fun in the Philippines campaign. And we've been doing a lot of activities in the digital platforms to promote our destinations in the domestic level, and of course to sustain our presence worldwide. In fact, we've had a number of awards that we have received, like leading beach destination and Asia's leading dive destination for the 2021 World Travel Awards. So I guess this shows that the Philippine destinations are still somehow part of the consciousness of various parts of various markets in the world.
Great. And could you, I mean, in your presentation, you mentioned something that I did want to touch on, and this is maybe a good point to open the conversation back up to the other panelists as well, if they'd like to jump in. You mentioned low impact, higher value tourism. You also mentioned things like nature, cultural tourism. We've talked about before. How are you approaching that right now? And do you think that what's going to attract travelers from abroad to the Philippines who fit those criteria and that, you know, those categories?
Well, this respite has given us a break and a chance for us to develop and diversify our product offerings. So when it comes to high value, low impact activities, we're now putting together various domestic tourism circuits to be able to spread out the benefits of tourism to a larger base of destinations and attractions. So we're looking at, for example, slow food travel packages, farm tourism, bike tours. These are, you know, activities that capitalize on the outdoors. And of course, we have sun and beach destinations. We have quite a number of islands. We're an archipelago. So we have all the space for social distancing. And this, I think, is one of our ways moving forward to promote the Philippines and its attractions. And we're developing these products.
Can I ask you for, I mean, I'm going to ask a question that's very close to my heart, and you know this already. Can you say something about food tourism and promoting food as a vector for bringing tourists to the country? You've obviously been a huge champion of that. Could you say something about that?
Well, thank you for that question. You know, we've been monitoring developments across the globe, and the World Food Travel Association has been saying that food tourism or culinary tourism is now mainstream, with about 53% of travelers being culinary travelers. And in fact, for the ASEAN region, there is an ASEAN gastronomy tourism master plan. And Thailand, I think, was the chair of this initiative. And the core objective is to really establish ASEAN as a center of food and gastronomy by 2025. So I think this is something that the entire region shares. And for the longest time, I think the Philippines has kept our food and cuisine one of our best kept secrets. But now we're trying to really promote our food, our ingredients, our iconic dishes, and the cultural and food tourism experiences that are linked to that. And right now, you know, there's so many different destinations that we would like to open up. And these constitute also immersive experiences into farming communities, fishing villages, sugar plantations, and it allows people to get a glimpse of culture. And so this is something that's really quite interesting and exciting for us to develop and explore further.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Please stay with us. I'm going to toss that question out either to Don or to John, if John is still with us. People don't. What would you say about promoting that sort of low impact or cultural tourism, food tourism in particular, in Singapore? Would you like to jump in on that?
Yeah, so I think if you're talking about gastronomy and food tourism, that's something that Singapore has been doing for a very long time. The kind of diversity of food that you get from a population that's basically an immigrant population, and then after that, that mixing and amalgamation of all the different migrant types of food, right? Which makes Singapore, in terms of its food offerings, very, very unique. And the range that we are looking at, from the hawker centers, we've recently got the UNESCO recognition of intangible cultural assets, right? Our hawker centers have been recognized for that because basically, right, almost every Singaporean eats in a hawker center at least once a day, if not once in 2 days. So that kind of food and the kind of prices that you have is very, very attractive. And then we go up to the upper scale, the Michelin restaurants that Singapore has to offer, and then the in-betweens, the Michelin and the hawker food. That's been a perennial for us, I think, food tourism. It's almost a given when you come to Singapore, right? You just eat and you put on weight. In terms of the next wave of tourists that will come or will start to travel, I think there's data and statistics showing that maybe the people of middle income in the economic strata will be the first to travel again, only because travel is going to be a bit expensive if we're all going to have to take PCR tests before we leave the country. When we arrive in the next destination, I'm not sure with the limited number of flights with VTLs and all, whether the price of airlines or air travel will go up. But hopefully that won't be for a very long time. I think in terms of equality of travel and us wanting to welcome, right, a whole diversity of travelers, I hope that is not just the main thing that destinations will try to attract, just the people who can afford to pay and to travel. I think business travel will be something that will start off. In terms of essential business travel, right? People who need to travel in order to clinch contracts, in order to negotiate, in order to engage. Singapore as a city destination, we've survived on that. So I think it's going to be a range of travelers. But again, as Philippines has mentioned, it's going to take time. I think for us, we also recognize that in order to get back to pre-COVID levels of 2019 figures for Singapore, the 18 million, it will take us at least till about 2025, if not 2026, to get back to 18 million visitor arrivals.
Okay. Don, would you like to say something about that as well?
Sure, yeah. Thank you very much, Vincent. And I do agree with both of you from Philippines and Singapore. And this is also quite aligned with what we are doing in the Mekong region as a part of the communication plan. I mean, personally, I think this is a time that we can reach out more and tap the new opportunities for the region, especially for your passion like food tourism and also the nature-based or even low-impact tourism. Because I mean, during the pandemic, people can see that focusing solely on the destination doesn't work anymore. So in the communication plan, what we are going to communicate, what we are to sending out the messages is all about tapping or highlighting more experiences rather than destination. So for example, like food tourism, I mean, of course, our region is doing heavily and promoting sort of alternative experience to traveler. For example, like Cambodia now is working and promoting on the culinary tourism on several destinations within the countries. Some of you might have seen the promotional video from the Ministry of Tourism Cambodia. And of course, also for Thailand has been known for a long time for food destination, as you have seen many campaigns related to food, and also Vietnam right now is also aiming to get more awareness and recognition on Vietnamese food, and of course, I mean, Laos is also integrating and immersing that kind of experience into the emerging destination, not only for Luang Prabang or Vientiane, as they are going to promote different parts of Laos and tying in with the food things. So I think this is also the good opportunity for the region to tap new markets, tap new products, and also finding out the new experiences to promote, to offer to the tourists. And also I think I do really agree with Philippines and Singapore in terms of low travel impact, because it would be, personally from my standpoint, it would be a new way of thinking, a new trend of traveler, that they will be more minded, and they will be more customized on what they are going to consume, what they are going to experience and immerse. And so I think in this point, I mean, the next phase of traveling within the region, travelers and visitors will look and seek for more authentic experiences and also immersive experiences, which is also relating to the slow travel, reduce carbon neutral impact to the environment, as relating to the nature-based tourism, as we can see. And right now Cambodia is also working on promoting new ecotourism destination, as well as Thailand and Laos, that they are aiming and intending to put different parts of the countries into the spot and promote that they are not only good at some of the main destinations. That's my point, Vincent.
Thank you. Are there any questions in the room? If not, maybe I'll end. Oh, Kun Krit is back with us. Thank you.